welcome back. You're watching ET Insights right here on ET Now. India Inc. is headed abroad and is investing in overseas markets across projects in coal, power, telecom, metals and mining. So what are the hottest destinations? Asha Gopalakrishnan finds out.
80% of the world's strategic mineral reserves, half of the world's gold reserves, and 10% of the world's proven oil reserves. The opportunity is massive. Top that with a benign regulatory environment and a more than supportive government. And you will know why Africa is irresistible to Indian businesses. By May this year, Indian companies had invested nearly $33 billion in various African countries.
We're in talk with actually two companies who are holding large reserves, large properties in Mozambique. They have done a reasonable amount of drilling and have a fair idea as to what the reserves are. So we're trying to actually buy a stake in the company.
We would look at acquisitions which are a strategic fit in the emerging markets. We have said on Asia and Africa, and also includes India. It fits into our beauty and wellness strategy, and of course the valuation has to be attractive in terms of it. So therefore we will continuously look at it.
Africa is one of the current favorites, and Indian companies have investments in a variety of sectors including mining, infrastructure, FMCG and consumer durables, driven by the prospects of high returns on the back of rich resources and low labor and input costs. The lure for infrastructure companies investing here is the fact that the payback period is faster. While it takes about 7 to 8 years in India, in Africa the money can be plowed back in 2 to 3 years. And FMCG and consumer durable companies want to tap the growing consumer demand. That explains why companies like Tata, Essar, L&T, Mahindra & Mahindra, Godrej and Dabur are betting on the Africa story.
I think within the next 6 to 9 months, we're going to rationalize in South Africa those institutions that work with small entrepreneurs, small business, and make their ability to access finances easier on the one hand, and make sure that we afford a lot more support. And that's the thing about entrepreneurship, particularly in the South African context.
Africa is not alone. Indian companies have been investing far and wide in the past few years. According to reports, US and UK have been the hottest destinations. Other countries that are rising on the outbound FDI league tables are Mauritius, Indonesia and Singapore.
We're looking with a clear strategic intent to have a listing in Asia, and that too in Singapore, because as Singapore is going to be the hub for our international growth and also for our Asian growth, we believe it's important to be local there, from being able to be closer to our investors, our shareholders.
Many Indian companies like Tata Steel and Essar that have been investing in Singapore agree with that. That's why Singapore is slowly becoming India Inc.'s favorite investment destination. According to the Singapore Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or the SICCI, as many as 120 Indian origin companies are incorporating offices there every month. That's because Indian companies with international expansion plans find Singapore as a strategic launchpad to access the high-growth regional markets. It enables access to capital markets and is familiar with business practices and market knowledge of the key markets in the region, which makes it an excellent platform to forge business alliances. To add to that, the robust legal system and IP regime makes it an ideal location for Indian companies looking beyond their borders for expansion.
That's the critical aspect of any outbound investments, as to what are the parameters that one will look at. Will one want to bring the monies back into India, what is invested, what is the time frame for that, as per their business plan. I think those becomes important elements, when one is looking at which jurisdiction to handle. Obviously, if you are going to leverage outside India for making the acquisition, then that needs to be factored in.
Next in line is Mauritius. All sectors from infrastructure to FMCG, IT to pharma are all making their presence felt there. Why not? After all, Mauritius offers an exemption of capital gains tax. In India, a company has to pay 30% on the operating income, while in Mauritius it is 3%. It is interesting to note that Mauritius alone accounts for 60% of equity investments by Indian companies. The draw is towards countries that are tax havens. For instance, the biggest investment this year was made by Mundra Port worth $2.2 billion as credit guarantee in Australia. It was followed by Biocon, which made a $350 million investment in its Malaysian subsidiary, and Sun Pharma's $300 million investment in British Virgin Islands. Statistics reveal that nearly one-third of the money invested abroad as outbound investment has been in tax havens like Cyprus and British Virgin Islands.
In all fairness, income should be taxed once, consumption should be taxed once. So you need a taxation framework that will achieve that once. But oftentimes the Indian tax framework does not achieve that. So that doubly gives importance to these tax havens. They are turning into these routing stations. They are turning into switching junctions through which multinational corporations are able to achieve tax efficient global corporate finance.
In the past decade, India Inc. has invested over $80 billion as outward FDI. Recent outward FDI deals include Tata Chemicals' $290 million investment in an ammonia-urea fertilizer complex at Gabon in Africa, NMDC's $1.5 billion tie-up with Australia's mine makers, and Dr. Reddy's Laboratories' newly expanded Chirotech Technology Centre at Cambridge Science Park, UK.
We are focused on the 5 top markets of India, Russia, US, UK and Germany, and we are looking at deepening our presence in all of these markets, and as and when an opportunity presents, we will look at that.
According to reports, the manufacturing sector accounts for the largest share in India's outbound FDI. The case with India's IT sector, though, is quite peculiar. In the face of stiff opposition on account of the global economic meltdown, Indian IT has been trying its best to reposition itself as a job creator in its leading markets, US and UK. And so, the sector is actively looking for strategic tie-ups and investments in these markets. The reasons for outbound investments across sectors could vary from shortage of raw materials to high costs and inflation to high levels of bureaucracy. Whatever the case, it's an alarming situation, and India needs to get its act together sooner than later.
So what does the government plan to do about India's rising outbound FDI? That's a question that Commerce and Industry Minister Anand Sharma answers on the other side of this very short break. Come right back.